All right, so this is the input maintenance class. My name is Chris Peterson. I work here at the MLS. We're going to talk about inputting and maintaining listings in the MLS system this morning. Real quick, just kind of talk about the two handouts over there. There's the thin handout and the thick handout. The thin one talks about Instinet and Form Simplicity and kind of how they fit into the process. And essentially with both of them, what you can do is you can do two things. First, you can import data from a previous listing onto a data form so you don't have to fill the whole thing out yourself. Secondly, you can fill out a data form, whether you filled it out yourself or imported information, and then you can send that to Paragon to create a partial listing. So you don't have to re-enter everything into the MLS system. And so we'll look at how to do that here in a few minutes. The second handout, the thick one, the first page is the input security level application. So you fill this out, sign it, have your broker sign it, and then return it to the MLS, and then your inputability is upgraded. If you ever change brokerages, you don't need to take the class again, but you do need to fill out a new one of these forms to have your new broker sign it. And you can get that on our members page. So if you go to imlsmembers.com and go to the resources section, one of the forms that is there is the listing input security application. So you can just get one of those. You can fill it out electronically, you can sign it electronically and send it back to us however you want to do it. My email address is at the bottom, so once you get it filled out, you want to send it back into me so I can update your information. On the other page, after the application, the next page there, you'll see a section that says inputting a listing in Paragon. You might have noticed, for those who were here at the beginning, on the slideshow beforehand, it talked about you don't need a computer for this class. This isn't a hands-on class because if you don't have inputability turned on, you can't input listings. And so it doesn't make sense to practice entering listings because you can't enter anything. So the handout's got a bunch of screenshots in there so you can use as a reference when you're entering and maintaining listings. After the section that has all the screenshots on page 8, that's where you've got a section that says residential data input form instructions. And that goes through all the required information of a residential listing, which is what we're going to talk about this morning. So all the required fields that the data form has and that Paragon requires, we'll talk about. And then the very last two pages of the handout, you've got the listing quick reference guide, which is just some frequently asked questions about if you have traditional listings, coming soons, temporarily off market, or office exclusives. You know, how long do you have to enter them in the MLS? Is public marketing available? That kind of information. And then the very last page, the back of the packet, is the status disclosure form. That's the form that's used if you have a coming soon or an office exclusive. The seller, agent, and broker all sign it, and then it's uploaded to your office exclusive or coming soon listing. That also is available on our member site. On imlsmembers.com on the resources page, you can get that there. It's also an Instinet and Form Simplicity. So before we jump in here and start talking about entering listings and using Instinet and Form Simplicity and all of that, do you guys have any questions you want to make sure that we talk about this morning? All right, so we're going to talk about how Instinet and Form Simplicity fit into this. And like I mentioned earlier, I mean, you don't have to put your computers away, but you can't do what I'm doing because you don't have inputability turned on yet, so it won't work. That's the whole thing. I mean, I had someone say, can't we practice entering listings? No, it doesn't work that way. Just like you can't practice driving on the freeway by yourself. Obviously in driver's training you can do that, but there isn't a practice freeway to drive on. There's not a practice MLS to enter listings into. So your handout starts with Instinet, so we're going to talk about that first. And the handout starts on the data form. So if you don't know how to find a form in Instinet, there's your homework. So we're going to bring up the data form here. On the left side of Instinet, there's the forms. Here is the MLS data forms, and I'm going to create a residential data form. Now, when you're working with the data forms, a couple of things to remember. This is both for Instinet and Form Simplicity. The data form, if you're going to import data from a previous listing, it can't be connected to a listing already, meaning it can't be in a transaction that you created from a listing that's already in the MLS, because that already has an MLS number attached to it. So the data form, if it's going to be used to create a new listing, it can't already have an MLS number. A horrible analogy, but it makes total sense, is you can't give birth to yourself. You're already here, you can't give birth to yourself again. So if a data form already has an MLS number attached to it, it can't be then used to create a new MLS number. So in Instinet, it's really easy because you can create forms that are not part of transactions. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to create a new standalone form, so it's not part of a transaction. And this is where the screenshot comes from on your handout, the thin handout there about Instinet. Under File is Listing Partial ID. So you'd find the MLS number of the listing that you want to import data for. So I did a search earlier. I'm going to pull a listing up here. So we'll just use this listing on Stucker, or Stucker, however you say that. I'm going to copy the MLS number, and I'm going to paste that in here, and then it's going to import like 95% of the information. And so it's a lot easier to verify that information is correct instead of re-entering all the information. And so when it pulls the information in, you want to make sure it's correct, because you can't blame the other agent if your listing's wrong, but you want to make sure it's correct. There are 4 required fields to send it to Paragon as a partial listing. You have to have type, area, listing date, and expiration date. So you'll notice that type and area already came in here when we imported the data. But if we go down here to the last page, it doesn't have the listing date or expiration date in here yet. So if I hit upload listing, it's going to give me an error telling me I need those dates. So the dates don't have to be correct. If your seller hasn't decided when they want to list their property, maybe they're like, we want to list it in October, we're not sure when, you can put placeholder dates in there, and then when you save it as a live listing, put the correct dates in there. So for example, I'll put in today is the listing date, the 12th, but tomorrow the 13th is the expiration date. Obviously that wouldn't be real, but now when I hit upload listing, instead of giving me an error, it's going to send that information to Paragon and create a partial listing, and then you can finish it in Paragon and save it as a live listing. Partial listings are only visible to you and your broker. They're not live. They're not calculating days on market. They're not tracking property history. And anything on a partial listing is editable. So there's the partial listing number. So in Paragon, under listings, I can go here to maintain partials. So when you go to partial listings, you're only going to see the partial listings you've created. Because I work at the MLS, I see everybody's. But here's that one that we just created on Stucker. And if I click on that partial listing number, all of the information that was in that data form has now been pulled into Paragon, so I can use it to create a listing. So it makes it really easy. Instead of having to re-enter things in the MLS and to fill out the data form, you can just fill out the information on the data form and then send it to Paragon. Does that make sense? Questions about that? So we'll look at how to do it in Form Simplicity, because depending on which Forms program you use, they both do it. So here's Form Simplicity. Now with Form Simplicity, the biggest difference with Form Simplicity is you can't create forms on their own. They have to be in a transaction. But the transaction, if you're going to import data from a previous listing, can't be associated with a previous MLS number, just like we mentioned earlier. So I'm going to go here to blank forms. Here is Intermountain MLS, and here's the residential data form. Now I'll bring the form up, and you'll be thinking, Chris, you brought the form up, it's not in a transaction. You're totally right, but when I try to do something with it, like import data from the MLS, it's not going to work. So like here is this import listing data. When I click on that and click import listing data Paragon, if you can't hear I'm clicking, nothing's happening because it hasn't been saved in a transaction yet. So I've got to save this in a transaction, so I'm going to click the little save button here, and I'm just going to do a new transaction. I'm going to call this input September 2024. And now when I hit save and submit, it's going to save that as a transaction and save this form in that transaction. And now that it's been saved, I can go here to import listing data, click on that listing, import listing data Paragon, and now it will come up and give me a place to put in the partial listing number or the MLS number to import the data. So just like before with Instinet, we'll go to the next property on our search here, one on Shimmer or Sun Shimmer, copy the MLS number, paste it in here, and hit import data. And just like we saw with Instinet, it's going to import 95% of the information into your data form. So especially with residential listings, if you're not working with new construction, there's a high probability the property you're listing has been listed before. Our sold data goes back 20 years. Expired and canceled data goes back 19 years. And so instead of reinventing the wheel, you can copy that data in from that previous listing and then just make sure it's correct before you send it to Paragon. And so again, it's got type and area here. Listing date and expiration date aren't here, so I need to put those in before I can send it to Paragon. here, put today as the listing date, tomorrow is the expiration date, and now when I click on the little cloud with the arrow pointing up, save and submit to MLS, it's going to save it, submit that information to Paragon as a partial listing, give me the partial listing number when it's created, and then in Paragon, under listings, go here to maintain partials, and there's the one on Sun Shimmer. In case you're curious, there have been 3 new partials created while we've been talking here. That's how quickly listings are getting in the MLS these days. So there's Sun Shimmer, and just like before, everything that was on that data form has now been pulled into the MLS. So if I was entering listings, that's how I would enter a listing. I would not enter it directly into Paragon. I mean, you definitely can do that, but that probably means you're doing things twice. You're entering it on the data form and you're entering it in Paragon. So if you only want to have to enter it once, when you're working with those data forms, whether you're in Instinet or Form Simplicity, you've got that save and submit to MLS in Form Simplicity, and in Instinet you've got upload listing to let you upload the listing. All right, so next we're going to talk about entering a listing directly into Paragon as if Instinet and Form Simplicity don't exist. And so the first thing we're going to look at is under the listings menu, you've got to choose the property class that matches your property. So we're going to talk about office exclusives first. There is not a section in your handout that talks about office exclusives because entering them is really easy. The hard part about office exclusives are the rules. So office exclusives or pocket listings are listings that your seller doesn't want publicly marketed. They want you to represent them, but you can't publicly market it. And so because of that, it goes in as an office exclusive, and it's only visible to agents within your brokerage. But you enter it into Paragon for accountability. So to enter it, you would come here and choose office exclusives. And there's only like 12 or 13 required fields. So there's not even a data form for it because if you're listing a property and you don't know the address, the city, the type of property, I'll give you, you're not going to know the parcel number, but you can easily look that up. It should be very easy to enter the information. With an office exclusive, once you enter into the MLS, you have to upload the status disclosure form. And so, like I mentioned, it's the last page of your thick handout. It's also on our members page on the resources section. There's the status disclosure form. So with an office exclusive, you would mark office exclusive on this form, and then the seller, agent, and broker all sign it, and then you upload it to the office exclusive listing once you save it. When you have an office exclusive, it is active for 30 days and then it automatically expires. So if you need to have it last longer than 30 days, you're just going to have to re-enter it or copy the listing in Paragon. When you get an offer, you don't enter it as pending. You just wait till it closes and then you re-enter it as an unpublished sold, and at that time it's going to require all the information, and if it's an existing residential property, including a picture once it closes. So that's how office exclusives work. As far as the rules go, there's no public marketing, means no showings, no open houses, no social media, no signs in the yard, no talking about it outside your office. There's very restrictive rules about office exclusives. So that's how office exclusives would work. The other time you use that status disclosure form is for a coming soon listing. Coming soons are regular listings. They're entered the next business day after you begin marketing the property, but you have the status of coming soon. And so you would fill this form out, the seller, agent, and broker all sign it again, and then it's uploaded to your coming soon listing. Coming soons can have that status for 14 days, and then they automatically change to new. If you want to make it new before the 14 days is up, you can manually change it, but coming soons can't last longer than 14 days. During that coming soon time period, you can't have any showings or open houses while it has the status of coming soon. And like it says here in this big section at the top of the status disclosure form, while it's a coming soon listing, it's not going to be on the internet. So it's only going to be in the MLS. So if your seller is trying to find their property online, they're not going to if it's a coming soon. Now you can find it in Paragon, you can email it to them, and they can share it and do things like that, but it's not going to be something they're going to find on their own. That's the whole idea, is coming soons aren't ready, so they're not out there for everyone to see. So that's the difference with coming soons. And then when you're entering listings, with the exception of office exclusives, if the property qualifies for more than one property class, it can be entered simultaneously in more than one property class. So if I've got a property that's a farm, but it's in an area where development's happening, I can list it as farm and ranch, business, commercial, and vacant land all at the same time. I'm going to physically enter it 3 times. I'm going to have 3 MLS numbers for that property. The time frame to enter the listings is the next business day after you begin marketing it. So if I'm putting it into 3 property classes, I've got to enter it 3 times by the next business day after I begin marketing it. Once I get an offer, I can mark all 3 of them as pending, but once it closes, I would decide which one to mark as sold and cancel the other 2 because it didn't sell 3 times, it sold once. But that way you can get it in front of as many agents or consumers that you need to. So we're going to pick residential for our fake listing this morning. So before we jump in and look at the required fields, on your handout, if you look at the page right after the application, that thick handout, where all the screenshots are, you're going to see a screenshot that looks just like what we're looking up here on the screen behind me, where it's got the input fields and then you've got this menu across the top. So we're going to talk about the menu here for a second. So on the left side, you've got save, and under save, there's 2 choices: save listing and save as partial listing. So we talked about partial listings are what are created when you import data from Instant Edit Form Simplicity into Paragon. Partial listings are also used to save the listing before you're ready to make it live, because there's not a way to save a listing and say go active on Monday. It doesn't work that way. If you want it active on Monday, you save it as a live listing on Monday. And so if you're not ready to make it live, save as partial listing lets you save it before you're ready. When you save it as a partial listing, like I mentioned before, it's only visible to you and your broker. No one else can see it. No one else can search for it. It's not accumulating days on market, and everything is editable while it's a partial listing. When you save it as a partial listing, it does not look for any required fields. It just saves what you've entered. So you could have entered everything wrong, and it will save it as a partial. Save listing is what you would click on to save it as a live listing. When you click Save Listing, then it does check for all the required fields, and if you're missing things or there are errors, it will give you those errors at the top, and you won't be able to save it until all those are addressed. So if you're working on a listing and you hit Save Listing and you get a bunch of errors, it has saved nothing. So if you have to leave Paragon, you want to make sure you partially save it and then come back later and address those issues. So Save Listing checks for all the required fields, and if there are no errors and it's saved, then it's live and everyone's going to see it. So later on we'll look at saving and partially saving, but that's how those work. Tax autofill lets you import information from either any of the counties in Idaho or from Malheur County in Oregon, the counties we have tax data on. If you're using Instant Edit Form Simplicity, you would already have the data here. You wouldn't use tax autofill. But if you wanted to do that because you didn't enter it from the data form, you can just come here, select the state. So we'll select Idaho, and we're in Ada County, so we'll do Ada County. And then you put in the address of the property that you want to import tax information from. So I've got a property in Meridian. So 2872 Pine Flats, there's one property with that address. So I hit search, and it's going to bring up the tax records. There's the tax records for the property on Pine Flats Way. And now I can click on autofill, and this is what it's going to import into the listing, about 9-10 things there. So it doesn't import very much information. People ask all the time, why doesn't it import more information? Well, it's because there's 44 counties in Idaho and 44 ways to format data. Idaho, free thinking, libertarian living, that's great, but that also means the state doesn't tell every county how to format their data, so it's the same everywhere, which means importing data is complicated, and that's all it can pull in. So that's what it'll pull in here. So I'll hit save. And so it's got the county, the address, the city, the zip code, the number of acres, the year built, and then a little farther down, in the financial section, it put in the tax year, not the taxes, the parcel number, and then we've got the owner's name. So that's the information that tax autofill will put in there, which is not very much. The next one here is price analysis, which you can't really use until your listing is active, but what it lets you do is it lets you see how many contacts that are being notified by agents about properties currently match your property, and then if you change the price, how many additional contacts match at that new price. And so we'll see that a little bit later on when we look at maintaining listings. Reset fields lets you clear everything and start again. Required only shows all the fields with the red square and the white R. Display all shows them all. There are some fields that won't have that R next to them that are required, and it's because they're conditionally required. So for example, here we have irrigation district, yes, no. If I mark that as yes, irrigation district name becomes required. If it's a required field, you have to put it in there. TBD or NA doesn't work. So you have to put in the information. If you don't put it in there, you could be fined $100 for inaccurate data for each thing you're missing. And again, only on those free-form text fields would you get away with that, because if it's required and it's something you have to select from, you can't skip those. So that's the reset fields and required only. The last two here, open all and close all. Close all is easier to show you first. That closes all these sections. When you're entering or maintaining a listing initially, only the general section opens up, but if you hit open all, that will open them all. The sold section doesn't become available until your status is set to sold. So even though I hit open all, I can't enter sold information until my status says sold. So that's that menu there across the top. So now let's start talking about these required fields. So this is where the section on your handout on page 8 will come into play, and it's going to have the required information there. We'll kind of go along here, and I'll try to make sure I point out where we are as we're going through this. So again, to get to this point, under listings, I picked residential, so we're on the residential input screen. And so the first thing to enter in here is status. And when you're entering information into Paragon, just like when you're searching, there's two ways to do it. You can type in what you want, like if I already knew the status I wanted, I can just start typing it in, or you can click on the magnifying glass, whatever works better for you. So you can do it either way. So typically when listings are entered, they're entered as new or back on market, and there's a difference. New means something new has happened. It's at a new office, or it's been off the MLS for over 30 days or more, and it's being listed where it was listed previously. Back on market would mean it's being relisted at the same brokerage where it previously was, and it's been less than 30 days. Both of those change to active after 3 days, so you want to make sure you enter them correctly. The no price new construction doesn't get used a ton, but it's pretty self-explanatory. It's new construction that doesn't have a price, and so you would select that. Coming soon, we already talked about coming soon listings. The contingent statuses are listings that you have an offer, but you're looking for backup offers. Per IREC, if you're going to do that, you have to have the seller's right to continue to market signed by both parties. And in the MLS, if you're using a contingent status, you have to put in the terms of the contingency or a bump clause so the other agents know how long they have until their offer will be considered. And as far as which contingent status to use, the board doesn't define these, so it's just common sense. For example, contingent finance, there's a hang up with finance. Contingent sale, they have to sell something, typically a property, but if they have to sell anything, that's contingent sale. Contingent multiple, there's more than one thing holding it up. Contingent short sale, it has to do with the lien holder. And then contingent other, it's none of the above. Sold is a listing that was in the MLS, went pending and sold. Unpublished sold is one that was not in the MLS, so like an office exclusive or a build job or a pre-sold property, or even a for sale by owner. If you represented the buyer and there wasn't an agent on the other side, that could be entered as an unpublished sold. Unpublished solds have all the same required information. They're only entered after it's closed though. Pending lease purchase, these are ones where you have offers and you're not looking for backup offers. And then rented leased are the other two that are there. There's one other status to talk about. It's not on the screen when you go to enter a listing, because you wouldn't enter a listing with a status, and that status is temporarily off market. On page 9 it talks about that. And temporarily off market's used if the seller wants to pause the listing for a short period of time, make it unavailable. So when you have that status of temporarily off market, you have to identify in the agent remarks when it's coming back or why it's not coming back. During the temporarily off market status, you can't have any showings or open houses. And the listing still is going to accumulate days on market and won't be syndicated to the internet. And so temporarily off market, there's not a marketing advantage for that. It's there again as a tool for your seller. Probably the best example for temporarily off market is Thanksgiving. I mean, if your seller's got a property for sale in November and everyone's coming to their house for Thanksgiving, they probably don't want to deal with showings the week of Thanksgiving, and so you use temporarily off market to avoid that happening, and then put in the agent remarks, no showings till December 1st or whatever it is. You also want to remember with temporary off market listings, they'll still expire. There's not a time limit for how long you can have that status other than your expiration date. All right, so we're going to pick new as our status here. So then we get to type. Now I mentioned earlier, if it fits into more than one property class, it can be entered in more than one, but I'm already in residential, so I have to decide which residential type best matches my property. Single family and single family with acreage are the most common types that are used in residential, and they have a shared definition. It's single family is the bottom of 9, single family with acreage is the top of page 10, and the shared part of the definition they have is in bold on your handout, so I'll just read it here. It says, a stick site manufactured modular built home on foundation. So basically, if the property is on a foundation, it is single family or single family with acreage. In the features, one of the required fields is construction. That's where you'd identify manufactured home or mobile home. But no matter the construction type, if it's on an actual foundation, then it's single family or single family with acreage. The difference between those two is land size. Single family means it's less than 1 acre. Single family with acreage is 1 acre or more. And Paragon has programming on the back end that if the number of acres is less than 1, it won't accept single family with acreage. So it doesn't matter how excited your seller is of their property with 0.85 acres. They don't have an acre, so they don't have single family with acreage. And it works the same way on the other side. We had somebody last year that had a property, it was the largest house in the subdivision. Most of the homes were near 1 acre. This one was 1.03 acres, so it had to be listed as single family with acreage because it was 1 acre or more. And the agent's like, well, no one's going to find it. That's not true. There are plenty of people that look for lots that are 1 acre or larger, and they would find that property. But that's the way it works. I mean, that's math. You can't change that. I mean, just like borders of counties. No matter how much you like Ada County, if you live on the west side of McDermott, you're in Canyon County. You can't just decide to be in Ada County. So if it's 1 acre or more, it's single family with acreage. Single family is less than 1 acre. Timeshare, there's a fractional ownership. Townhouse is going to have lot ownership and have a lot and block number in the legal description, where a condo is going to have a unit number and not have lot ownership, the unit number in the legal description. Both of those are things that are not freestanding. If it's freestanding, even if you call it a townhome community, it isn't a townhouse in the MLS, it's single family. Townhouse means it's touching something else and it's not freestanding. Mobile manufactured, owned lot, rented lot, these are ones that aren't on foundations. So you would select the one that best applies. Recreational land with home is probably the most vague of these. It just means the land the home is on has recreational value. So maybe it borders Forest Service land or BLM land, it's on the river, it's on the lake. The trick is you want to make sure you pick the one that best matches your property. I've had plenty of people say, well, what about a house in McCall? Wouldn't that be recreational land with home? Well, if a family with kids moved up there and the kids went to school and parents went to work, that sounds like single family to me. Recreational land with home to me would indicate something probably you didn't live in all year. Again, there's not a definition that indicates that. You just have to use whatever your opinion would be. But what I'll say is more people are looking for single family homes than recreational land with home. So what's the intent of your seller? Is it a place that they have to snowmobile in because they don't plow the roads, or the plumbing isn't available in the winter? That again might be more recreational land with home than single family. So you just want to choose the one that's best. We'll pick single family here. Then we have price, that's pretty easy. And then we have county, that came in with the tax autofill. Now I'm going to take county out, and in a few minutes I'll explain why. After county, we have area. Now when you go to area, and you bring up the area list, it's 25 per page, and it gives you 4 pages. If you change this to 100 per page, it makes it one long list. Outside of Ada and Canyon County, area is very easy. If the name of the city or town that your property's in is in the name of the area, that's the area you pick. So for example, if I have a property in Wendell, it's Gooding, Wendell, Bliss. If I have a property in Filer, it's Filer, Hollister, Rogerson. But in Ada and Canyon County, areas are divided by roads. And so on the gateway where you log in, on where it says other services and tools, if you go here to show more, there's a link here that says area maps. It takes you to our members page. And then here you can come in and type in the address and see what area it's in. And the other areas that are here outside of Ada and Canyon County, those are there as for representational purposes. They're not the actual boundaries. I'll give you a great example of what I'm talking about. So if we zoom in here to the Magic Valley, here is Jerome. That is not the city boundaries of Jerome. It's not an octagon. But it's there to indicate that if you're in Jerome, it's 2030. And so if it's outside of Ada and Canyon County, it's going to be, if the name of the city or area is in the area, that's what you use. So let's come here and put our address in, 2872 South Pine Flats Way, Meridian, Idaho. And now when I hit search, it will indicate what area this is in, which this property happens to be in area 1000. So if there's ever a question, especially for properties in Ada and Canyon County, the area maps trumps. That's going to indicate what area it's in. So this one happens to be in area 1000. Now, the reason I took county out is county and area are linked together. So when I put area 1000 in there for Meridian, the only county choice I'm going to have is Ada County. If I had left Ada County in there, the only area choices what I would have had would have been ones in Ada County. So I couldn't have shown you the areas in other places. So when you're entering a listing, if you're going from top down, once you put the county in there, the only area choices will be the ones that correspond to that county. Now those are manually entered by us at the MLS. So they should be correct, but there's always times where some little town that's never had a property listed in the last 20 years has a property being listed and we don't have it on there. So just be aware that that does happen sometimes, and you can just email support and they can correct it. All right, so that's area. Then we get to subdivision. There are 6,534 subdivisions on the list. If it's not in a subdivision, you've got 0 not applicable. If it's not on our list, you can email support and they can add it. That's support@intermountainmls.com, and they can add the subdivision. They'll verify it's not there. A couple of things with subdivisions. First, we don't have phases in here. Columbia Village is one subdivision. So if you've got a subdivision that's a phase of an existing one, even if it might have a sign out front that says, Creekside at Pebble Creek, but it's Pebble Creek Phase 3, it's still just Pebble Creek. It's not a new subdivision, so it's not going to be in there as something new. Second is, if there's a different marketed name than legal name, we're going to have the marketed name because that's the name consumers know the subdivision as. Typically, that's the name that's on the sign out front. And so if you're getting a title report or looking at tax information, that may not reflect the actual name that people know the subdivision as. A couple of examples. There's a subdivision in Meridian called Woodbridge. There's a big rock out front that says Woodbridge, but the legal description of Woodbridge is Snorting Bull. There's another subdivision in Meridian called Autumn Fair. The legal description of Autumn Fair is Trish's sub. There's a subdivision in Nampa called South Fork Ranch. The legal description of South Fork Ranch is Midland Park. And so if you're following the code of ethics, you're going to know where that property is. You're going to have driven by it, or at least done Google Street View by it, and you will have seen the sign with the name of the subdivision. So you want to make sure it's correct. And if it's incorrect, obviously you can correct it and get it fixed. You can go in there and change it because that information isn't locked on the listing, but you're doing a detriment to your seller because people aren't finding the property because you've got the wrong subdivision. And so this one is in Thousand Spring. Then we have the address. That's pretty easy. City, state, zip code. So then we get to the internet fields, and if you're wondering where these are at the top part of page 11. So the internet fields deal with how your property will be handled on the internet. And on the data forms, the internet fields are on the top right, and it says check if no. So if you check those, what that means is when you send it to Paragon, it will toggle them to no because they default to yes. So when I mean the internet, we're not talking about Paragon. Paragon isn't the internet. The internet is something everyone can get to. So like Netflix isn't the internet unless you have a Netflix password. Paragon is only the internet if you're a member of the MLS. And so internet include means should this listing be included to all the websites where your broker is sending listings to. If you mark this as no, then it will only be in the MLS and it won't go anywhere else. And you'll notice the other three are grayed out because they don't apply if you mark that as no. Internet address display means when this is syndicated to the internet, going to the websites where your broker is syndicating listings, can the address be displayed? If you mark that as no, then the address won't be displayed, but the listing data will be there, meaning people looking for it on a map won't find it because there's no address, but if they're searching by beds, baths, square footage, that information obviously would bring up the listing. Display comments is a situation where a consumer logs into an agent or broker website and can they leave comments about your property. If you mark that as no, they can't leave comments, which I've had people say, I don't want people saying bad things about my house, which I understand that, but you're also not letting people who like it say good things to their agent about it. Because I think people spend more time writing good things about properties they like versus negative things about properties they don't like. I mean, other than telling an agent you don't like a property, why would you leave a comment about not liking it for the agent? I mean, you're just going to move on to the one you like. Display AVM. AVM stands for Automated Valuation Model. And so probably the most common and well-known AVM is the Zestimate on Zillow's website. And so if you mark this as no, that doesn't stop those valuations from happening. It means this property won't be used to calculate valuations for other properties. And so if you mark that as no, that's fine. If there's ever been a situation where a property is supposed to be on Zillow or other sites and it's not there, 99% of the time it's because they marked this as no. They all default to yes. So again, they had to have marked it as no. And if you forget what they mean, and this is for any of the fields that are here, over on the right you've got these little question marks. You can mouse over these and it gives you the definitions. So if you don't know, if you forget what they mean. The next required field is type of ownership, and the two choices are fee simple and less than fee simple. Fee simple means there are no restrictions or exclusions. Less than fee simple means that there are. So for example, in McCall, around the lake, they have state land leases where you own the structure but not the land. That would be less than fee simple. So you just want to make sure you pick the one that best applies to your property. Then we have search by map, which doesn't have an R next to it, but before you save your listing, it'll make you place the listing on the map correctly. So we'll wait and do that when we go to save it. Then we have garage capacity. He wants to know how many cars fit in the garage. All it takes is a whole number, 0, 1, 2, 3. I had someone say, what about a 3.5 car garage? Well, the question then is, what is a half car? Did anyone drive a half car here? They don't exist, so neither do 3.5 car garages. What exists are oversized 3-car garages, which is a great thing to write in the remarks, but in the garage capacity, it's only 3 because that's all that will fit in there. And so you just want to make sure you're entering the correct garage capacity. There isn't a size requirement, it's just common sense. So we're talking about 3 regular sized cars, sedans, minivans. We're not talking about smart cars or Hummers. We're talking about regular sized vehicles, how many fit in there. If it's a tandem garage and it's 2 cars deep, that's a 2-car garage because the capacity is 2. And of course, if there's not a garage, you put 0. There's other information here about the garage, dimensions, RV garage dimensions. You can put all that in there, but it's not required. But that information is available. So then we get to land size, age, and level. And those are all preset choices. So if I come here to land size, I have some options to select from. And land size validates against the number of acres. So I'm going to put in standard lot. I will tell you I will get an error because 0.24 acres is not standard lot. We'll see that later on. Age validates against year built. So I'm going to put in 11 to 20 years, but the year built was 2001. So even though 2001 might have been a great year, it wasn't 11 to 20 years ago. It's been longer than that. And so it'll flag that as an error. And then level, you want to pick the level that best matches your property. Below grade means there's a basement. So if you have a property that has a basement, you'd want to select one of the below grade options. But sometimes there's things that better describe it than below grade. For example, if I've got a property that you open the door and there's a set of stairs going down and a set of stairs going up, that property has below grade square footage. But split entry better describes that. And so you want to pick the one that best describes the property. So we're going to pick single with below grade. Then we have directions. You have 4,000 characters. I would highly recommend not using 4,000 characters because on the listings, it can only show about 100 characters. I don't know why 4,000 is what the limit is. There aren't any guidelines for the directions other than you have to have them. I would highly recommend also using north, south, east, west. Don't use left and right because you don't know where somebody's coming from. I mean, imagine, I've seen properties that were on Eagle Road and someone said, go left off Eagle Road. So if they're coming from Eagle, that's going to take them into Boise. If they're coming from the south, that's going to take them into Meridian. So you want to make sure your directions are easy to read. And especially if you had to manually place the map because the roads aren't on Google Maps yet, your directions might be the only way to find the house. So you want to make sure they're easy to read. Number of acres came in from the tax records when we did the import, but it takes 3 characters to the right of the decimal. And then we had year built. They want the 4-digit year and the oldest part of the home. So if the home's been renovated and there's been remodels, if they didn't tear everything down and re-pour the foundation, then whatever the oldest part of the home is the year built. And then we have lot size, length, and width. If you're wondering where we are, I believe this takes us to page 12. Yep, top of page 12-ish. So lot size, length, and width. They want the frontage width and the shortest length for depth. With new construction, plat maps have all that information. Even existing homes, there's plat maps that have that. But an easy way to get it for existing homes also is using CRS data from the MLS. On the gateway where you log in, CRS data is right there. If you're already in Paragon, under tax is the CRS data tax search. Either way, you're getting the CRS data. And then you would put in the county and then come here and enter the address. So 2872 South Pine Flats Way. And then here we have the lot dimensions. So it's the frontage is 88, the shortest length is 112. So we put 112 and 88. If the lot is irregular, meaning it doesn't have 4 sides, then you can put IRR in there. But if it has 4 sides, even if it's not a 90-degree rectangle, it's not irregular. Irregular would be like a cul-de-sac. So like, for example, this property right here, that's got more than 4 sides, that would be irregular. And so that's when you're entering the lot size, length, and width, you want to remember that. The length and width aren't used to calculate number of acres or anything. It's there to give an idea for a potential buyer how big the lot is. If I've got a trailer that's 150 feet, this probably isn't the house for me because my 150-foot trailer isn't going to fit there. And so that's what that's there for. Irrigation district, we talked about that. Yes, no. If there is a district, if you mark it yes, the name will be required. So then we get to school district at schools. So school district is linked to area and city. So I put Meridian as my city. I've got Meridian as one of my area. So when I go to school district, my only choices are West Ada and Cuna. If you live in Meridian, you're not going to Boise or Valley View. You're going to West Ada or Cuna. And then when you select the district, you're going to have choices for schools that are geographically assigned within that district. And so you just want to make sure that you select the correct schools. As long as it's correct when you enter it, if they rezone the schools, you're not required to come and change it. Of course, if you want to, you can do that, but you don't have to do that. Schools sometimes are ones that people have issues with because they're entering the listing and they get down here and a school choice isn't available. Typically that's happening because the city and area and county aren't correct. So when you're entering a listing, if you start from the top and work your way down, then by the time you get to schools, it should be correct. But sometimes people are coming in here and they're entering the schools first. The other thing to watch out for is on the data forms. So when you're entering schools on the data form, all you have is just a drop down of all the schools that are on that list. And sometimes there are schools that have the same name. So let me find one here. Where is it at? Barbara Morgan. So there's a Barbara Morgan Elementary School in McCall, because that's where she's from. In Boise, there's a Barbara Morgan STEM Academy, also that's an elementary school. So when you're filling out the data form, it doesn't know that I'm in West Ada and I picked the Barbara Morgan Elementary School in McCall. But when I send that to Paragon, it's not going to work because that's not going to match to the area that's there. So if I send this to Paragon, it would probably give me an error because it's not going to match the district. And so you just want to keep that in mind when you're sending the data. If you get an error and you're not sure what it is, just blank out that field and then send it to Paragon and correct it in Paragon. So, because in the forms, it doesn't have the conditional logic to say this school belongs to this district. It just has the list of schools. So you just want to make sure that if you get an error, you're aware of that. All right, after the schools, then we get to the square footage. It's the first of a few that are called calculated fields. The bottom of page 12 and top of page 13 talk about this. So what calculated fields means is that nowhere on here am I typing in the total square feet. There isn't a field that says total square feet. But I've got above grade finished, below grade finished, above grade unfinished, and below grade unfinished. We'll talk about the fifth one here in a minute. So here I would come in and put in, let's say, 1,700 above grade finished, 1,000 below grade finished, and no unfinished. So then the total on my listing would say 2,700 square feet. But nowhere am I typing in 2,700. So that's how the square footage works. And actually beds and baths are the same way. The detached additional the detached additional dwelling total approximate square feet, the fifth square footage field, is about an additional structure that has livable space. So it could be a guest house, it could be a detached garage with living area, it could be a manufactured home on a foundation on the property. That's all detached additional dwelling. So if you have one of those, you put the square footage in there. That also gets totaled to the square footage for sale because that's what's for sale. If you don't have the detached additional dwelling, you put a 0 in there. And then they're not required, but you do have places for the beds and baths if that detached dwelling has those. Then we get to the room sizes and the levels. Room sizes are not required. If you want to put them in, it is number X number. But bedroom levels, however, are required. And so your choices for the room levels are down, main, and upper. Main's the main level, down is below the main level, upper is above it, so you just put them in accordingly. If there are more than 5 bedrooms, there isn't an option for anything more than that, so you just got to put those in there. And then after the bedrooms, the other rooms don't have requirements for levels or anything like that, but if you want to add them in, of course, you can. People do that all the time. The one thing to watch out for with the other room sizes and the levels that are there is you can't call one room two things. So for example, here's den size and level. Here's office size and level. Both of those could be rooms described as having built-in storage, and so I might have a room that could be a den or an office, and I put both in here, but there's no context, and so someone else might think there's a den and an office. And so you just have to decide what you're going to call it and call it that. There aren't any requirements or descriptions from the MLS about what things are. I've seen listings one time be called a living room, the other time be called a great room. You can call them whatever you want, but you can only call them one thing. Now, obviously, in the remarks, you can be more descriptive and say great den or office on the main level, but here, if you're going to mention it, you've got to commit to what you're calling it. All right, so then we get to the bedrooms and bathrooms, and they're set up with main level, upper level, and below grade. And so you're going to put in the amount for each level. So let's say we've got 3 bedrooms on the main level, no upper level, 2 below grade, 2.5 baths on the main level, no upper level, and 1 below grade. So then I would have 5 bedroom, 3.5 baths for my property. And like we were just talking about, if it's a toilet and a sink, it's a half bath. Any more than that is a full bath. There aren't any 3/4 baths or anything. The one thing to remember about bathrooms information in the MLS is you want to make sure it's correct in Paragon. And then when we syndicate the information to other websites, they may display it differently. Probably the best example that comes up sometimes is Zillow. If you have a 2.5 bath home and you pull it up on Zillow, it will say 3 bathrooms because Zillow shows the number of rooms with toilets. And the reason they do that is they have to aggregate data from MLSs all over the country. Some MLSs have a field called number of half baths. We don't have that. And so they have to be able to aggregate that data. And so the way they do that is showing the number of rooms with toilets. Now, when you scroll down and see the detailed information, then it does show you 2.5 baths. But you just want to keep that in mind that there isn't a way to correct that on Zillow or other websites because it's not wrong. What's got to be correct is what's in the MLS. And you just want to remember that. And then that's the last part of the required information for the general section. Other comments or questions about that stuff? Okay. So then we get to the features. On the data forms, the features are the second and third page. They're just a bunch of check boxes. So the required ones have little asterisks next to them. So you want to make sure you've got those in there. Any others you select, of course, will be sent to Paragon. If you're on the all features line and click the magnifying glass, that brings them all up. And if you do required only, then it shows you the 3 that are required. The 3 that are required are construction, list class, and source of square feet. So let's say I've got a property that's got a crawl space with frame construction and vinyl siding. If I had a manufactured home or a mobile home, this is where I would indicate that. And then maybe it's exclusive right to sell. And then the square footage source came from public records. If you choose public records like I just did, you're indicating that the total square footage on your listing is the same as what's on the tax records because you're saying it came from there. You have other choices: agent measured, appraisal, building plans, other. So you just want to make sure you're selecting the correct source of where that information came from. And then once you have those 3 required ones, you can finish the listing. You don't need to worry about any other features. That being said, people use features all the time to help describe the property. The thing with the features, different from the remarks, is that features are things that already exist, not things that could possibly happen. So a few examples here. If I mark central air under cooling, that doesn't mean they can go to Home Depot, buy an air conditioner, and come connected and they have central air. It means it's already there. So if I crank down the thermostat, the AC is going to kick on. Or if we go down here to included kitchen features, if I mark dishwasher, that doesn't mean there's a hole in the cabinetry and they can get their own dishwasher. It means there's one already there. Or if we go down here to lot features and I pick garden space, it doesn't mean they can dig up the grass and make a garden, because if that's what that meant, then why even have it? Because that'd be everywhere. What garden space means is there's a place that is a garden or a weed patch that used to be one. And the garden space is a great example to use because there's so many varieties of gardens out there. Some are really ornate with fences and hedges and rose bushes and archways. Others, they dug up the grass, they threw down some seed, and now they have corn. Both of those are garden space. And so you just want to remember there's a lot of variety in what some of these things can mean. Probably the one that people have the biggest issue with, and I don't quite understand, is RV parking. RV parking means it's a place that was either created for or is being used for parking an RV. But if it's not either of those two, it's not RV parking. So RV parking could be a gravel pad, it could be a cement pad, it could be pavers on the side of the house, it could be a backyard with a gate that opens up to the road that they've been parking the RV on the grass. That's all RV parking. What is not RV parking is a big backyard with a gate that opens up to the road that they have not been parking the RV on. That's just a big backyard with a gate that opens up to the road. Now in the remarks, you could put, place to park all your toys. But here, that doesn't exist, so you can't mark RV parking. I had someone ask in class, well, what if they just start parking their RV there? Will that work? That will work, but if they're just doing it for a sales ploy, hopefully they capped the sprinklers and did the things that a person really using it for RV parking would have done. But it's got to be used for that purpose. That's the key. And with features, as long as you have those required ones, you can come back at any time and add any other ones you want. Because the thing with features is a lot of times they're used in searches that are set up for buyers, And so if you've got those features, it'll be sent to the people that are looking for your kind of property. All right, so that's the features. After features, we have the financial section. And if you're wondering where we are, the financial section starts on the middle top part of page 14 with association fees. So the first part of it is about homeowners associations. We've got association fees, association frequency, setup and transfer fees, and transfer fee type. So if you have an HOA, of course, you would put it in there. If you don't, you would put 0, not applicable, and 0 in there. Then we have local improvement district. This is a temporary taxing district on the location where that property is. So with the local improvement district, they're districts that have a sunset time. They're not perpetual. They're not ongoing. An example of one that has ended in Nampa over by the Idaho Center like 20 years ago, they had the North Nampa Improvement District, and homes in that area had a higher tax rate to pay for some of the infrastructure costs in Lionsdale and Kensington subdivisions, but after I think 8 years it went away. The reason that's important is if your property is in a local improvement district and you mark yes, that helps a potential buyer understand that if this is the house they want, it might be worth paying higher taxes for 5 years instead of getting the house that's number 2 on their list. But the key is it goes away. There are not a lot of local improvement districts in our MLS. If you're curious if a property's in one, when they get their tax assessment from the county every year, it itemizes every entity that gets money from the taxes, and a local improvement district will be on that list. The thing with a local improvement district, though, is it goes away. Like, it's not community college or mosquito abatement district. Those are ongoing and never end. Local improvement districts end. Homeowner's exemption. Do the taxes reflect a homeowner's exemption? Again, same thing. If the property is not owner occupied and they don't have the homeowner's exemption, and you mark this as no, that helps the buyer understand that if they owner occupy it, the taxes will be lower than they are currently. Flood insurance required. Is flood insurance required if you have a mortgage? And then the next required ones are the taxes, and the tax year already came in from the tax autofill. So back here on CRS data, here's the tax information. The most current year, obviously, is 2023. So there's the taxes for 2023, which are 1962. They don't need the cents in there. So 1962. And then we have the legal description. For most residential properties, you're going to see lot block, name of the subdivision, like right here, lot block, name of the subdivision. You also can get that right from CRS data because we're getting it from the county. So like here's the legal description right here. I can copy it from here. And then I can paste that in here to the legal description section. Now, if it's vacant land or farm and ranch, sometimes the legal descriptions are really extensive and they're not going to fit in that legal description section. So you can upload a document that has the full legal description, but here you would need to identify the name of the document, like Exhibit A or whatever you're calling it. Then we have the parcel number. Again, that came in from the tax information, but the parcel number is also here on CRS data right up here at the top. And then we have the distressed property fields. Potential short sale, REO bank owned, in foreclosure, auction, HUD owned. They're just yes, no fields. So just mark them accordingly. And again, like most fields on the listing, they're changeable once the listing's live. So maybe it doesn't start out as a short sale, but later on it is. You can always come here and update that. So that's the financial section. Comments or questions about that stuff? The remarks and agent remarks are not required. Now, the remarks and agent remarks are used all the time. The remarks, which is the public remarks, and if you're wondering where this is, it's on page 15. You have 1,024 characters to enter in there, and all that can go in the remarks, the public remarks, are things that are related to the property. In your handout, there's a section in bold that's on that remarks section. This was actually updated in the rules earlier this year. It says, no agent office or marketing information is allowed. Public remarks shall not include mentions of concessions, credit, or similar comments. So it's got to be things pertinent to the property, but nothing about those kind of things. So it's got to be related to the property. Now the agent remarks, because it's seen by agents, you've got a lot more flexibility. All your contact information be there, brokerage information, and that's where you can put in the information about concessions, credits, incentives, or anything else. But it can't go in the public remarks. So it can go in the agent remarks. What can't go in the agent remarks is unrelated third-party marketing. So in the agent remarks, I can't write Pioneer Title is a good title company. I can't write that in there. But I could put seller prefers Pioneer Title because now I've shown the connection to the transaction. That's the key. You have to show the connection to the transaction. And obviously in neither of these places can you put commission information. Commission information doesn't go in the MLS anywhere, including the remarks and agent remarks. Questions about the remarks? Because they're not required, again, you can always come back at any time and add them. So then we have the agent section. And when you're entering a listing, you are the agent. There's not a way to enter it as a co-agent. Co-agents can maintain listings if they have input ability, but they can't enter a listing. To add a co-agent, you would just come here, type in the person's name, select them from the list, and now you've got that agent in there as your co-agent. And if, like I said, if they have input ability, they can maintain it just like the listing agent can. If you're on a team, you want to make sure you add the team in here as well, because if it's not on the team, then anybody that's maintaining things for the team, like a transaction coordinator, wouldn't be able to access the listing because it's not on the team. So if you're working with a listing that's not on the team, in order for team members to get to it, someone who can edit it, agent or broker or co-agent, would have to add it to the team for the other people to see it. So then we have selling agent to present yes, no. This is selling agent to present offers directly to sellers. This is the last thing on page 15. So IREC requires that in Idaho, as the listing agent, you field the offer for your seller, meaning the seller isn't given the offer by the other agent, it's given to you, you take it to your seller. So if your listing's in Idaho and you're an agent in Idaho, you mark this as no. But we have listings and agents that are in Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington, and they have different requirements. So that's why it's a yes, no field. Listing service. What level of service are you providing to the seller? And listing service is on the top of page 16. So there's full service, limited service, MLS entry only. Full service is most common. It means you're providing all services to the seller, presenting, negotiating, counter offers, you're doing everything. Limited service means you're not doing all those things. You're doing part of it. Maybe you're presenting the offer, but they're negotiating on their own or something. Limited service means you're not doing everything. MLS entry only is the least level of service. That means that the listing broker is doing what IREC requires, and then the only other thing they're doing is putting it in the MLS. And so these listing services are there so that other agents who are bringing buyers understand what's happening on the other side of the transaction. And so because the MLS board can't dictate to brokers how they run their business, these options are there depending on how that brokerage is set up. But again, full service is most common. So then we have the owner and tenant contact information. It's not required. When you put it on a listing, if the listing is sold, canceled, or expired, it's automatically removed. So we don't keep that information in there. Then we have the dates, listing date and expiration date. The listing date isn't based on a date on your contract. It's based on when your marketing starts. That's the listing date. So if I got a contract signed by my seller on the 1st, but we're not going to start marketing it until the 15th, then my listing date is the 15th. That way it doesn't go on the MLS with 15 days on market already. It's not the contract date. Because you're not required to enter it in the MLS until you begin marketing it. So if you don't market it, you're not required to put it in the MLS. Expiration date, though, is when your listing agreement expires with your seller. And as long as it hasn't expired, you can continue extending it if you get extensions from your seller. But once it's expired, you can't bring it back. You can't extend an expired listing. You have to relist an expired listing because you're going to have to get a new listing agreement because your old one has ended. But as long as it hasn't expired, you can continue to extend it. And expiration dates are only visible by the agent, the listing agent or co-agent, and the broker. Occupied by, owner, tenant, vacant, whichever is applicable. And then we have showing instructions. Now showings have to be readily available, equal to everybody. There isn't an exact time frame when showings have to start, but they start equally for everyone. Listing agents don't have an advantage to show a property over anybody else. And so you want to make sure you're picking the correct showing instructions. If you're going to use Broker Bay, you would select Broker Bay and you would come here and leave this on yes. If you're not using Broker Bay, change that to no. If Broker Bay is marked as no, then it won't have this book appointment here. If it's left as yes, book appointments here, and agents understand that that's how the seller and listing agent are scheduling showings. So if you don't want to use Broker Bay, make sure you mark this use Broker Bay as no, but it defaults to yes. And you don't have to use Broker Bay. That's just the showing tool the MLS provides. And then we have the virtual tour fields. There's 3 branded and 3 unbranded fields. Branded means it's going to have agent and brokerage information on the virtual tour. Unbranded means that it won't. And so you just want to make sure you put the correct web address where it goes. And then those virtual tours on the client detail, there are 3 virtual tour fields right up here at the top for those 3 unbranded tours. On the full detail, there are two fields here for the first branded and first unbranded tour. If you've got more unbranded and more branded tours, on the all fields detail, it has everything. So that's the last section when you're entering the listing. Questions on the agent section or any of the input stuff we've talked about other than data entry is super boring. All right, so we've entered the information. So I'm going to go back to the front part of your handout where the screenshots are, and we're going to talk about maintaining or actually saving the listing. So if you look on page 2 and 3, you'll see screenshots there about saving and partially saving. And on page 3, you'll see the screenshot with the errors that come up when you go to save it. So that's what we're going to talk about here. And so up here on the top left is save listing and save as partial listing. So partial listing, I want to save it, but I'm not ready to make it live. So I hit save as partial listing, and it saves the information. And here it tells you that your listing has been partially saved. If not completed within 12 months, it will be removed from the system. If you are the listing agent, you can also delete partial listings if you don't want to see them anymore. They, like it says, they'll automatically be deleted after 12 months though. And then you have two buttons here, continue input and close. Close would mean I'm done working with the listing and I'm going to come back later and finish it. So under listings, to come back to it, I would go to maintain partials and I would bring it up there. Continue input means I'm saving my work as I go. So you know how things are, the internet works where you are, like with your home, at your cabin, at your office. So if you're at a place where the internet is sketchy, I would highly recommend partially saving after you complete a section of a listing so that you don't lose something. Because what's the old adage? It's a poor craftsman who blames his tools. If the house falls down, it's not the hammer's fault. If you don't save your listing, it's not Paragon's fault. And so if you're partially saving as you go, you at least have up to that point. So I'm going to hit continue input here. So now that I partially saved it, it assigns a partial listing number. And while it's partially saved, I can upload pictures. I can see a preview of the full detail. I can even print or email that. I can upload documents. I can enter open house information. Tours are only used in Moscow and Twin Falls for their caravans. But you can't do the lockbox until it's a live listing. But while it's a partial, you can do lots of things so that when you're ready to make it live, all the information's there already. Like you don't have to wait for it to be live to upload your documents or upload your pictures. So now I've got my listing information in here and I want to save it to make it live. So here is save listing. So I hit save listing. This is where it starts looking for those required fields or things that are missing. So first thing right off the bat, it always looks for the dates. It does not know what dates are correct. You put the date in there, it wants you to verify it. So first is it wants to know if the listing date is correct, and it says listing date must be less than or equal to today. So I can't put the 15th on there because today's the 12th, but I could put before the 12th. And if the dates are correct, I just check the accept box, and now when I hit save listing again, it won't bother me with those. Now I do have one other one that wants me to verify if it's correct, and that is the price. I put $1,000 in for my price range, but if that's what I want, I can hit accept and it will take that. So now when I hit save listing, now what I'm seeing here are the errors. So a few of these we talked about already. So the first one says mapping. You must manually geocode your listing by placing a pin on your listing address's location. So when I click on this, it brings up the change geocode screen, and if there's an address, it will show me where it thinks the address is, which if you remember where it was on the area maps, that's exactly where it is. But if it was in the wrong spot, you can just move it where it needs to go. If it's in the really wrong spot, like let's say for example, there's a new neighborhood going in, and this is where it's going to be, but the roads aren't on here yet because Google Maps hasn't been updated, I can still come here, and you're required to do this, come here and click on the push pin and put it wherever it's going to be, and then it puts my listing in that location. So you've got to have it marked in the right place. So if you're looking at a listing and you click on the map icon and it's totally wrong, the agent did it on purpose because they had to come here and do this. I mean, that's the whole thing is they had to, whether they moved it somewhere on purpose or just hit confirm without looking at it, either way, they did it on purpose. So you got to do the map. Then we've got, please validate number of acres according to the land size keyword. So we talked about this earlier. Number of acres came in from the tax records, and you would get that from the tax information. So the number of acres is correct, but the error makes it sound like it's the number of acres that's wrong. It's because it's validating against the land size up here. So I am not a mathematician, but Google is. So 0.23 acres to square feet. 0.23 acres is 10,018 square feet, which is obviously greater than 9,999. It's 19 square feet more. So I would need to change this to 10,000 to 0.49. If you're interested, 0.22 is the last standard lot. 0.23 is over 10,000 feet, 10,000 square feet. Then we have, if age equals 11 to 20 years, year built must be between current year minus 11 and current year minus 20. So again, the year built came from the tax records, but it makes it sound like it's incorrect. What's incorrect is age. So you got to make sure you have the correct age that matches the year built. And then if I added these other levels, then I could go in and save that as a live listing. When you save it as a live listing, there is no waiting period, no one has to verify, no clearinghouse. It is live. It's going to be out there for everyone to see. So you want to make sure that information is correct when you enter it so that it's not incorrect when people view it. Questions about saving or partially saving? All right, so now we want to talk about maintaining listings. All right, so let's talk about maintaining listings. So on your handout at the top of page 4, it shows this select an action. Now, select an action goes through what the maintaining actions are. After that in your handout, it's got screenshots to kind of go through what all those do, but I'll kind of refer to them from that select an action section. So to go maintain listings, under the listings menu, you can go here to maintain listings. Now, another way to get there, before I forget to show you, is when you're looking at your own property, so you're in Paragon, you open up a listing, this is your listing, under the More menu is Maintain Listing. If it's your listing, you'll have that option, and when you click on it, it will take you to listing maintenance to be able to maintain it. If you want to go maintain more than one, under listings, you go to maintain listings, that brings up all your listings. Now again, I work at the MLS, so I see everybody's listings, but you're only going to see your own. So when you're looking at properties on this maintenance screen, over on the left you have the MLS number you can click on. That'll bring up the entire listing for you to maintain it. You can also click on the price, and that will let you change the price. Changing the price does not give you the status of price change. If you want to give it the status of price change, you've got to maintain the whole listing. So I'm going to click on the MLS number here. And so then I could come here and under status, choose price change. After 3 days, that will change back to active. But the reason changing the price doesn't automatically give you the status of price change is because what if you had to increase the price? You probably would rather have it stay active instead of say price change. And so you don't have to give it the status of price change if you don't want to. So I'm going to try to find a property here that we can use to talk about price analysis. All right, so here's the property on Bethel here again. So if you didn't know already, in Paragon Connect, it's the same information that's in Paragon, and you can come here, enter listings, maintain listings, whatever you want to do. So up here on the right is edit listing. So that loads the fields to be able to maintain it.
Can you say that one more time about the Paragon and the other?
Paragon Connect is the same information.
Right.
Yeah, so the same data is in Paragon Connect. You can enter listings in Paragon Connect. You can maintain them in Paragon Connect. So whether you're on your phone or your computer, you can do that.
Okay.
So up here at the top in Paragon Connect is price analysis. And in Paragon, when you click price analysis, it pops up the same thing. So what you have here is the current price of the property. And right now, there are 918 potential buyers that match this property. And potential buyers, if you click on the little icon, I'll tell you, those are contacts whose saved search notifications include criteria that match this listing. So right now, there's 918 people that match this property that have been notified about this property. But maybe this property isn't selling, even though 1,000 people have seen information about it. So we're going to change the price, and we're going to drop it to $450. And then when I hit recalculate, it's going to tell us how many more match at $450. Excuse me. So there's 1,200 at $450. Just for fun, let's go to $400. And so these are contacts who've given their contact information to an agent who then created a search for them and set that up for them to be notified from Paragon. So even though there were 900 people looking at this property at $489,000, there are 1,700 people that think a property like this should be at the $400,000 price range, because that's how many people match this property at that price point. And these are real people. These aren't people that are on Zillow or Realtor.com or some website that haven't committed to an agent to get things sent to them. These are people who are being notified. So if you've got a seller that doesn't know how to price competitively, this is a great way to show them how many people are looking for their property at a different price point. And then if you hit apply price, that would change the price, and of course you'd have to save the listing. You can only do price analysis on your own listings though. So if it's not your listing, you can't do it. If you don't have input ability, you can't do it. But it's a great way to be able to see how many people are looking for a property at a certain price point. So that is price analysis. All right, let's go back here to the select an action. So, yeah.
Same amount of like beds and baths and stuff.
Well, it matches their criteria. So, I mean, it could be somebody just looking for that price range or beds, baths, and all that. Yeah. So it just means it matches their search. And there's no way to know who those people are. The idea isn't to tell you that. The idea is to tell you what people are looking for. So, all right, with select an action, you got a picture of it there on page 4. Maintain listings, like clicking the MLS number brings the whole listing up to maintain it. Price change lets you change the price. Edit expiration date. As long as it hasn't expired, you can come here and extend it. Add edit remarks lets you update the remarks or the agent remarks. Add edit virtual tour lets you put in the web address for the virtual tour there, the URL. Change geocode. If the mapping needs to be updated, or maybe you want to zoom in or out more to show more of the location where the property is, you could do that. Copy clone listing. So this does two things. First, lets you copy your listing. Maybe this is your listing and it's expired. As long as you're at the same brokerage where you have that listing, then you can copy clone it. So if you hit copy clone, I'm not going to go super slow here, but you'll notice it copies almost everything. The status isn't there. The only other of the required fields that we're missing are the dates. Everything else is there. And so copy clone makes it really easy to copy your listing. Then of course you just put in the new dates and you've got a copied listing. The clone function comes into play when you've got similar properties that you're entering multiple versions of. Like let's say I'm entering 10 building lots. I enter one building lot, save it as active, use copy clone listing, change the address, the parcel number, and the legal description. I've got a new listing. That's copy clone. Add edit open house. This would let you enter open house information. To add open house information, you just click on add new, put in the date. Maybe the open house is going to happen on Saturday. It's going to be from 1 to 4. And then that open house information will be added to the listing. When a listing is viewed in the MLS on the full detail, if there or client detail, if there's an open house scheduled, there'll be an open house icon right here that can be clicked on, and it gives the times of the open house. And then that open house information is also syndicated to Realtor.com and all the other websites the listing is going to. And so and once the open house day is passed, it's taken off the listing even though it's still in the maintenance. Add edit tour, same thing if you're using it to set up the tour like for a caravan for your association. The only place I know they use this is in Moscow and in Twin Falls, and that's what they use it for, is for their association caravans. Associate documents. This is where you upload documents like the status disclosure form or a property disclosure. To do it, you just go to associate documents, and then you click on add new, click on browse to find the document you're going to upload. And then you want to come here and give it a name. Let's say this is the property disclosure. We'll put test on here. If you make it public, then when the listing is emailed to consumers, those documents will be included with a link. If it's not public, it's only visible to agents in the MLS. And so when agents see it in the MLS, if there's a document icon there, they can click on it. You'll notice like this one, they're all public, which means they would all go to the consumers when they're emailed as well. You don't have to make them public, but you can if you want. So that's documents. All right, then we got picture administration. Now, on your handout, there's a screenshot, and I'll just show you where it is on your handout. It is on the bottom of page 6, and it talks about the size and dimensions that the pictures need to be. When you're in Paragon, if you click on Upload Help at the top, it gives you that same information. So the size they want is 781 kilobytes. The dimensions are 3072 by 2308, or 2304, excuse me. If it's larger than those, it will be compressed to make it fit. So if it's a big picture, like you take a picture with your brand new iPhone, it's the largest picture it can take, it will be too big for Paragon, and Paragon will have to compress it. And so you just want to make sure you're as close as possible, because the more compression that happens, the more the picture will be fuzzy and pixelated. So if the picture is the right size, then to upload a picture, there's 2 ways to do it. You can click on the Upload This Image button to upload one picture at a time, and you can either drag and drop the pictures into this section, or click Add Files, and then go find the picture you want to use, select the picture, hit Open, start upload, that'll upload the picture. If you want to do more than one picture, you would come up here to Upload Multiple Photos, and then either drag and drop or select multiple pictures to upload. So we'll select these 2 pictures here, hit Open, and then start upload. Again, these pictures are greater than the 781 kilobytes, and so it's going to compress them to make them that size, which happens while you're uploading them. So then once they're uploaded, there are the pictures. You can click and drag them to change their position if you want. You can do some very limited editing by clicking on the little pencil icon. And what you can do is you can rotate the image left or right. You can also click and drag anywhere on the image, and then click on the crop icon to crop it. And then you can save the picture. I don't want to mess their listing up, so I'm going to take my 2 pictures off of here. Now, as far as requiring photos, the only kind of listing that requires a photo is an existing residential structure. So to be built, under construction, not residential, do not require photos. But an existing residential structure does require photos. All we require is the one front photo. And the time frame to add that is the next business day after it's in the MLS. And your photos can't have any marketing or contact information. Now, as far as photos go, photos have to be pertinent to about the property listed, or pertinent to the property listed, meaning you can't have pictures of the area if it's not pertinent to the listing. For example, if I was listing a property here where our building is, a picture of the Boise Greenbelt or the foothills aren't pertinent to this property because it's not where we are. So you can't upload lifestyle photos because you're not listing, you don't have a lifestyle license. You have a real estate license to sell real property, so it's got to be pertinent to the listings that are listed. All right, so that's picture administration. All right, we'll talk about sold, closed in a minute. Audit listing is something I have because I work at the MLS, because we can do an audit and see everything that's happened to a listing. View activity report. This will show you the activity your property's had, meaning how many times it's been emailed, how many searches that have been saved match your property, how many agents have viewed it, how many clients have viewed it. And so you can email or print this information and share it with your clients. When you're looking at the activity report, the way the hits work. So first off, when you're looking at a listing, you're looking at your own listing, right here on the top left, it says agent and client count. That's the agent hits and client hit totals on your listing. You can only see them on your own listing though. So the way the counts work is the total hits is everybody, agents, clients, how many people have seen it. Agent hits are people who viewed it, agents that have viewed it in Paragon. And the way the hits are counted is if I view a property 5 times today, that's 1 unique hit, 5 total hits. That's how that works. And so clients, like unique client hits 592, client hits 762. So some of these people have looked at it more than once. That's what that's telling you. And so that's the activity report. We'll talk about set as pending in a minute. So collab link, share via text, share via Facebook, and share via Twitter are all ways for you to share the listing that you're listing as a listing agent. Now, especially if you're working with a seller and you've got a coming soon listing, this is a great way right after you save it as a live listing to share that listing information with your seller so they can go put it all over social media and do whatever they want to with it, because they're not going to find it online if it's coming soon. So collab link share, that generates a link, and then you can copy it and share it however you share things. And then when that link is clicked on, it's a client-friendly link. It's also mobile-friendly. And so when they click on it, they'll be able to view the property. And it's got the property information there that can be viewed. Share via text lets you text that same link. Share via Facebook and Twitter would take you to Facebook or Twitter also to share that link. So it's just a way to share that property that you have listed. So Super Lockbox, this lets you assign the lockbox. So you just click assign and then put in the serial number and the shackle code of the box, and that will assign the lockbox. If you don't have the lockbox information, if you go to SuperWeb either here or on the gateway, go to Supra, then you can put in the MLS number to assign it to your box. On Supra's website, they need the MLS number, and Paragon, they need the serial number and shackle code of the lockbox. The reason you would want to assign the lockbox is if the box is assigned and an agent clicks on the icon on the listing, well, it's fine when it has a box assigned. That's the one we were just looking at. So if there's a box assigned to a listing, it'll come here and it will show the listing. It'll show the access hours that other agents can use to access the box. The reason as a listing agent you would want to do that is if listings are staying on the market longer now than they have been before, and you're going to create showing reports typically out of Supra to show your seller what's happened for showings of that property. And when the lockbox is assigned, then Supra can include the address and the picture of the property on those reports. If you don't have it assigned, then all you're going to get is the serial number of the lockbox on the reports, which that's not going to help your seller know it's their box unless they go verify against the lockbox on their doorknob. And so by assigning it, it makes it a lot easier to create those reports that are going to be customized for your seller. So that's the Supra information. All right, last two to talk about here, set as pending and sold closed. Set as pending is easy. You have an accepted offer, you want to make it mark it as pending. So you go here, hit set as pending. It automatically changes the status to pending. So you could also maintain it manually, change the status to pending. Once the status is pending, then under the sold section, you can enter the pending date and the proposed closing date. The pending date is when your offer was accepted. The proposed closing date is, of course, when it's going to close. The proposed closing date always has to be in the future. If something happens and you have to extend the closing, you want to make sure you update Paragon to reflect that. If your proposed closing date becomes a date in the past, then you're sent a courtesy email reminding you to correct it. If you don't correct it and you just enter your listing as sold, you'll get a fine for not updating the proposed closing date because it always has to be in the future. So that is set as pending. Now, before we look at sold closed, back on your handout in the very back section where all the definitions were, on page 18, there we go. Page 18 has sold information. So before I hit sold closed, I wanted to make sure we were talking about that again. So that's where the required sold information is. So I'm going to hit sold closed here, and that's just like the set is pending. That's going to change my status to sold. Once the status is set to sold or unpublished sold, then you have all these fields where you can enter the information. So first is how did it sell? Was it VA, conventional, FHA, whatever it was? Select that. Now the pending date and closing date are already in there because you entered that when it went pending, but maybe it closed a day early, so you want to reflect the date that it closed. Then we have real property contributions. These are additional objects contributed by the seller, typically in new construction that are affixed to the property, such as a fence, landscaping, or sprinklers. So it's things that can't be taken. It's not an appliance, it's not a light fixture, it's not a door, things that can't be taken. An example might be a property that was in a new development. Maybe it's the last property in the neighborhood to be sold, and to incentivize a sale, instead of only putting landscaping and sprinklers in the front yard, they put landscaping and sprinklers on the whole property. So maybe here I might come and type in full sprinklers. And then when an appraisal happens, appraisers know that this property included full sprinklers, where all the other ones only included the front yard. So that's what that's for. If it doesn't have it, then you can put NA or none. Then we have closing cost contributions. This is a dollar amount paid by the seller on behalf of the buyer. If they didn't do that, then you put 0 there. Then you enter the sold price. The sold price is required. You can't skip adding the sold price. Only members of the MLS see that. There are other things here as well you can enter in that aren't required. And then you've got the selling agent information. Who brought the buyer? So then you just start typing in the name, and then choices will come up from agents whose names match what you're typing in there. If the agent is not a member of the Intermountain MLS, there's an option here for non-member agent, non-member office. So maybe I listed a property in Cascade, and a member of the Mountain Central MLS, who's not also a member of Intermountain MLS, was the selling agent, so I put non-member there for that. And then once you've got all that information entered, then you hit Save Listing. That will save it and submit it, and once it's saved, then all that sold information is there and everyone can see it. If you entered something wrong with the sold data, there is not a way to come back and fix it on your end. But on the MLS side, we can correct it. And so you would just have to notify support, email to them, support@intermountainmls.com, and include documentation, and they can update information. Like sometimes there'll be 2 agents with the same name, and they'll put the wrong selling agent in there. If it's less than 30 days, we will not charge you to maintain your listing, the $15 fee. If it's been longer than 30 days, it's a $15 fee for us to maintain your listing. And you will need to do that because we want it to be correct. So the thought process behind that is within 30 days, you figured out your mistake. After 30 days, someone told you about it. And so that's why. So because you are not able to go in there and change it. I mean, there's been plenty of people, the minute they saved the listing, they knew they put the wrong agent in there, but they can't go back and fix it. So we give them the ability that we'll do that for them. Questions about the sold data or any of the input stuff that we've talked about this morning? Then just to reiterate one more time, if you haven't yet, fill out this input security form. If you want to fill it out electronically on our member site, if you go here to the input security application, it's a fillable PDF. So you could fill it out electronically, and then you could go and use Authentisign or Form Simplicity eSign and sign it electronically, and then just email it back. If you get it back today, then today your security level will be updated. If it's not today, then whenever it gets turned in, we'll get it updated for you. So thanks for coming, you guys. That's all I've got for you. So have a good afternoon.